Welcome back, Officers of the Public. It's your course on Police Chief APGAINS. Another topic that came up on a random impromptu stream. We actually celebrated our 4th year on YouTube. I know one of those years we've basically been retired and have just been working on perfecting the roster and the cube and all that stuff to help new players. But every so often, once a week or once every 2 weeks when I'm actually home for a few hours, I sit down and record a video that I think has been really piquing my interest. And I'm sure it's in the thumbnail and the title already, but is there a perfect roster anymore? Many, many years ago, the answer was yes, but the game has grown massively in complexity, the fluidity of GAC and TW and all that sort of stuff. The new systems that CG has added that are very dynamic, even though we like to troll them and make fun of them and call them stupid. There probably is technically some theoretical best thing that you could possibly do. Just like living your life, there probably is some theoretical best thing, But as in GAC and Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, as in life, it's probably not feasible to achieve whatever this theoretical perfectness is, but rather figuring out how to take wherever you happen to be at this very instant and structure the future based on the present. I know you guys have probably grown tired and actually are probably happy for my forced removal from YouTube for the last year, because you don't have to put up with my stupid analogies, but I think it's an apt one. It's almost entirely for the vast majority of players. If you're spent over $100,000, you're top 500 Kyber, 14 million GP, probably not super applicable because you can solve every problem with a credit card. But for the rest of the players, even players at the upper echelon who just are not at that, unattainable point, there is always a best thing to do next. There probably isn't a realistic best thing to do always, because things are always changing, and it makes that impossible. The only reason we were so confident about being 100% correct on what to do back in ye olden days is because, well, we did know what was coming next very far in the future, and so we were always able to be better. And we've taken a lot of that experience and, yes, turned it into the cube, which has been nice. We're actually, side tangent, we're working on literal machine learning AI. It's actually really interesting. I'm a non-technical person, but I live in the Bay Area and I find this stuff very interesting. And we're trying to figure out how to take what is actually working for hundreds of thousands of people and formulate, where you should go based on that. And it's a lot of science, but you have to throw in a little bit of art to give it parameters to work with. It's a really interesting project to tackle. But the point I'm trying to make is much more important to focus on what is the next step relative to where we are than it is to focus on what does the next 4 years of my farming look like, which is why you don't see me really do farming guides, and haven't for many years, because they've been obsolete for many years. If you've watched any of the videos on the When to Farm playlist, which is just like a quick 1 to 2 minute impromptu thing I did because I'm almost never home. I don't live here anymore, actually. I speak very frequently about this post-roster review, or not post-roster review. The roster review never dies. This post-farming guide world we've lived in for the past 2.5 years. So when I get questions on stream, or just in general, like today, someone asked me, do I farm Cal? Do I farm... it was Cal, it was like C-3PO, or Jedi Training Ray. All right. If this was 2016 or 2019 or 2018, I probably could have given you whatever the 2018 version of that example would be, I could probably give you a definite answer, right? Because most people's rosters looked relatively the same. But today, I mean, if you replace those teams with literally any other team, the answer is always, it depends. And so trying to figure out a way to take where you are, yes, we're assigning values to everything to make it easier to quantify this where you are, which has proven to take many, many years of hard work from many, many people and many, many late nights. But it's come together quite nicely and is looking to be infinitely more promising in the coming weeks/months. But taking all of that information and figuring out what that next step looks like. And I think it's been, as far as GAC outcomes in particular, because it's kind of the only thing I care about, it's really nice to see that winning percentages are skyrocketing based on this information over the last 2 or so years. And I'm really hoping that we can get, I mean, there is a limit, obviously, because if everyone uses, the algorithm, it kind of defeats the purpose because everyone's doing the exact same thing or ends up in the exact same place. But it's really promising to see win percentages skyrocketing, game retention in the game being reported to be much higher. Obviously, we know the cube is time, money, will to live as the 3 dimensions. And I think a lot of people, miss that will to live part. And I am personally of the belief that will to live can come from domination. It doesn't have to come from farming Jar Jar Binks. It can come from the fact that Jar Jar Binks is really, really fucking good on defense. And the satisfaction of catching dubs is the will to live. So the answer to the original question of, is there a theoretical best thing that you could possibly do? If we can go back in time to where it's pretty easy for most people to know long cycles of content into the future, maybe. We largely don't live in that world anymore. There are still a few people. I'm not as active, so I am not one of them anymore, sadly. There are still a few people, but they're not really in the Galaxy of Heroes community, which is very strange because they know most of the Galaxy of Heroes information that's, material, non-public, insider trading stuff. But I don't think people should ever, for the rest of Galaxy of Heroes, worry about what a farming guide looks like. I think most of your attention should be focused on figuring out what exactly do I have, whether, emotionally or through something like the Cube. Link in the description, join the Patreon. Go to settings, apps, connections, link Discord, automatically join. Does all the hard work for you, which is kind of the wonder of it, because we're working very hard on the generative prediction of what's next. But I think even without that, the quantifying where you are now is probably, for most casual players, massively beneficial. But I think most effort should be put to identifying where am I actually right now? Where are the holes? Am I too tall? Am I too wide? You know what I mean? And then the rest of your energy should be focused on where do I go next? And the smallest fundamental level, that is what a roster, or not a roster, that is what a farming guide is. But the problem is, it is always changing. And me and, no one else who's potentially has the brain power or time to put together, an hour-long farming guide, farming plan, wants to redo that every fucking week or every month, you know what I mean? It's just not practical, especially when farm times are incredibly long, right? Like, C, for example. I'm sorry, I'm just rambling. Like, it's just, I spend most of my time thinking, and I don't have the outlet to talk about this stuff anymore. So when I do streams or when I do videos, I just need to get all of this fucking stuff that's been crowding my brain out into the ether to process it better. C was, I would have actively dissuaded people from farming C for his entire existence until Bane came out. You know what I'm saying? Like, if it was the opposite, if it was like JMK is suddenly permanently useless because they add a marquee character, Hondo with 2 dicks instead of 1, and CG is just accepting that Hondo with 2 dicks instead of 1, it just basically makes JMK completely useless. You know what I'm saying? If you get someone farming for 3 years, on a 3-year farming plan, and then suddenly, a year of that 3-year farming plan becomes totally, you know what I mean? So I think the reactiveness, the adaptability that you can have, knowing exactly where you are, quantifying where you are, makes it infinitely easier to make informed and less downside riddled decisions going forward. I know it sounds like I am just finished huffing glue or whatever, because the way I talk is a little strange. But I'm hoping that I answered the original question. No, there is no farming guide. And gave some background on why I've been investing not only mine, but other people's effort into the cube. Because we've already beaten Galaxy of Heroes twice, and I think this third time allows everyone to beat Galaxy of Heroes. And it just feels, it's a video game. You want to beat it. And this feels like the closest in this modern post-Datacron, post-money-based matchmaking world. This feels like the closest that we've come to finally beating the game again. Theoretically for the last time, unless they completely overhaul the game or drop SWGOH or whatever. I do need help. We're always looking, especially if you are, have years of experience in machine learning, stuff like that. We always need help with the cube. Probably equally as much as we need anyone working in machine learning, anyone who has any experience trading LLMs or anything like that. We also need just people on the Patreon to test it out, because it's hard to find bugs sometimes, and it's also hard when you think so much about it to have an outside opinion on what features to add next, whether they're guild features or GAC defense, offense planning features or counters or whatever, you know what I mean? We need help from everywhere. So thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I love you, and I will see you later.